My guest in this episode is Jen Andersen, all the way from Los Angeles, USA. Jen is a professional imperfectionist who helps writers of all kinds achieve their dream projects by ditching perfectionism and imposter syndrome.
And of course, I'm all about imperfection, but I'm like, oh my God, my camera angle and the mess behind me. And
Well, I
there's
just
no
want to
amount of
start by saying welcome. It's absolutely amazing to have you here as a guest on our podcast. And I have really been looking forward to this. And I think it's really interesting that you say, oh, well, is my camera at the right angle? Now, I would like to ask you first about perfectionism. I can see, I am aware that it's specifically around writers and writing and the writer's block and how it may be caused by perfectionism. And you have something that says giving up perfectionism for writing, and I was thinking many people give up writing because of the perfectionism. So I think it's just spot on. It's so good. And I
absolutely.
love your energy. I love that energy on your website, on your group as well. So how did you experience this yourself? Did you experience perfectionism yourself? And what did it mean for you?
Oh no, I still experiencing it. I still experience
Right.
perfectionism.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
One coach said to me that, yeah, probably the thing that we coach about is the thing that we need help with, because it is a
Mm-hmm.
constant reminder. And it's like, yeah, like even as it is, I just launched micro coaching. So I had to do like a little video, just promoting it, and just the opening picture of it with the thumbprint looks like, of course, it's some weird ass angle. And so I'm like, oh my God, that's awful. It's awful. And it's like, it's fine. This
Yeah.
one frame of photography is not going to determine anything in my life or anyone else's life, but
Mm-hmm.
it's so ingrained,
Mm-hmm.
and it's I focus on writers because I'm a writer myself, but also, I mean, any entrepreneurs, anyone who has to write for their job or their business, has the same exact thought processes, except they don't
Mm-hmm.
know that everyone who sits down to write feels the same way. And
Yeah.
what I teach can actually be applied to any sort of perfectionism. And in fact, I do suggest
Yeah.
that people start with something that is lower stakes for them. So if you're a writer, maybe start focusing on, like, you try it with like planning a dinner or planning a party, that so you kind of get your feet wet. If you're a party planner, maybe focus on writing something. Whatever is not going to matter so much to you, because
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's too important. I can't be imperfect here. It's too important. But once you get used to being imperfect in other parts of your life, then you can start bringing it to the stuff that's important
Mm-hmm. So that you are more accepting.
of yourself. Yes. It,
Yeah.
it's, anything that most or all of the roadblocks that I teach about with writers, I experience, have in the
Mm-hmm.
past, still do occasionally. These are neural pathways that are well worn, and it takes a lot of repetition to break
Yeah.
out of it. I hear some people say, "Oh yeah, I was a perfectionist and I gave it up." Oh, really? Good for you. How did you do that?
Yeah, yeah. And you by becoming aware of it, I think the most important thing really is, I think you can be reforming perfectionist, you can be recovering perfectionist, but it's like, oh, it's gone now. It's, as you say, it's so deeply ingrained that by being aware of it, you're like, oh, I know what's happening here. I
Yeah.
know what my perfectionism is doing, and I'm procrastinating here. Is that helping me? Uh,
And every
right?
time you
Or
catch
I'm
yourself,
retaking.
yes, every time you catch yourself, that's a chance to redirect yourself and to retrain your brain.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Catching yourself is really, really important. It's amazing chatting with you. Um, so, so where do you think it came from? Your perfectionism. Have you kind of
oh,
thought about how it might have been?
poor therapist is the charm. It's oh, yeah, I've worked through it. I think a lot of us have dysfunctional childhoods, like, um, and that does not help. And so you're walking on eggshells if you're around anyone who is volatile, um, even
Mm,
some part of the time. You convince yourself that if you're perfect, it won't give them an excuse. You won't get yelled at. They won't get upset if you're perfect. And you don't realize they're looking for an excuse. They're going to find an excuse no matter what I do. So, it takes a lot to realize, oh, it's not always me. I'm not always the one who's wrong. And
mm.
that takes a lot. And I also have the misfortune to have been a gifted student. I'm it's good at standardized tests. Hated sitting still in class. Hated it. Um, Still not a fan. Um, hence the freelancing and working for
Yes,
myself.
yes, yeah,
But when you are one of the smart ones, you know, you hold yourself to very high standards.
yeah.
And I graduated in my class of high school. I was fifth out of 221, and decades later, I remember this. I even remember who was ahead of me. It's stupid. Not that I didn't even want to be valedictorian. I didn't want to be first. I just wanted to do my best. And yet, I'm like, okay, fifth.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, so interesting, isn't it? And then, and also just being at that level, you find your self-worth in
tied to
in
that.
in the things that you do successfully. Oh, well, if I keep doing this,
Yeah, exactly.
everyone will think I'm good enough. So they won't notice my flaws and they won't see I'm not good enough. They
Right.
won't notice it. And also what you said about trying to do everything perfectly so that other person won't get angry or won't be upset with you. But no matter what you do, they'll always find something. That is really interesting you say that, because it goes with um, where focus goes, energy flows,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. And so we put all our
Yeah.
efforts into maintaining the peace that is never going to be maintained.
Mm-hmm.
Especially as children. We think we have so much more power to control things than we actually do as children.
Yeah.
And it's
And
just
it's also, I guess that if you were validated, if but if one is validated as a child, it makes such a big difference in the adulthood. So if you're afraid of, for example, conflict, to say something because you would be shouted at and so on, in case the other person doesn't like it, then that moves into your adult relationships as well.
oh,
that
absolutely.
that you think by not saying anything,
Mm.
you can keep the peace, where in fact you are just being untrue to yourself
But
and
and
to
also on the flip side of that is you might become too comfortable with conflict. My husband is a mild-mannered Midwesterner, so I'm the one that handles, talking to noisy neighbors and that kind of thing, which can be annoying because noisy neighbors can also be sexist. So having him talk to them might be more effective, but fine. I'm the yeller. And you start thinking, but something's weird. We're not fighting. Oh, that's good. Yes, everything is very boring, very, very even keeled. It's like, oh, that's great. I like that actually. You know, and my husband, he is just so weird and quirky and unapologetic about it. He has the confidence of two mediocre white men. And it's because his parents, and I complimented his mother on raising him to be so confident. And she's like, oh,
Yeah.
we didn't have much experience with children. We just thought everything he did was normal. So, and the fact that he wanted to wear his Star Trek t-shirt to picture day in school and stuff, they thought it was normal. So no. That's still, it comes very easily to you, but
I saw his recent t-shirt actually. Something like, I'm the best thing my wife has on
yes,
the internet.
I'm the best thing my wife found on the internet. Yes, we did actually.
Yeah, that was
yes.
that was quite amazing. It made me laugh.
Yes.
Well, that screams confidence all over it, doesn't it?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yes, yeah. So you mentioned writing, but it sounds like there were many areas of your life that were affected. So there was the your academic life.
Mhm.
Seemed that it was affected. Where else did you notice?
Well,
Parts.
I worked in technology for 13 years. And I started as a technical writer and became a systems analyst, which is did like functional design. I would tell the programmers what to build. And with software, you have to be precise. The computer isn't going to be able to guess. And if you leave anything open for the programmers, they're going to guess wrong. So that precision, so it really drove me crazy that everyone else wasn't that way. And I mean, I come by it honestly. My father was a systems analyst as well, and he is incredibly detail oriented, obsessed even. And he's very good at that. And with that job, that's a good thing. But for me, being around other people that did not have that level of rigor drove me crazy because it's software. It has to be.
Yeah.
And if you work someplace that's kind of corporate, where it isn't a meritocracy, it's super frustrating. Being the smartest person in the room and the lowest ranked sucks. It's like, really, you don't know how to program your cell phone and you make more than I do. Okay, fine.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that. Was there a reason why you were the lowest rank? Was that because you had just started, or?
Well, some places, yes. It was, my first technology job was a place that's not there anymore. That they really like to hire people as low as possible and then just give them little bumps and bumps. And
Yeah.
and then when I left, I started getting more and more and more. But one of my last technology jobs was a place where everyone they were equitable in the sense that everyone with the same title had the same salary. And it's like, because I wasn't, in my 50s at the time, they weren't going to let me be a senior analyst, even though I was qualified to be a senior analyst anywhere else. And so, and to actually become a manager and all that, I don't have the personality for that anyway. But it's like, so how much people.
So what you're saying actually is that you had those high expectations from yourself in certain areas, but you also had those really high expectations from other people. What are they doing? Why aren't they doing their jobs properly? Why do I have to? Keep an eye on them.
Why am I not being rewarded? That's the thing.
Yeah.
Why am I not being rewarded for being so diligent, for being so good and rigorous at this job? Why am I not getting the rewards? Because especially in academia, that's how it works. You do well.
That's right. That's right.
And I did like working in technology initially because in a lot of ways it was a meritocracy. But then after the dot-com boom, when everything went to hell, and the jobs that were available weren't necessarily at the best companies to work for. And ultimately, a friend of mine said, being diplomatic, once I had been laid off yet again because technology, I don't, and we were coworkers at the time, or had been coworkers. And she said, I don't think working in technology makes you happy. And I thought, yeah, she's absolutely 100% right. So I started doing freelance writing, which I still do part of the time. Aside from the perfectionism coaching, and still it is that perfectionism. it can really still rear its head. With the client, I have one client who is not as strict, as hung up on perfection as I am. And so I finally had to realize, okay, if she's not upset, then I'm not going to beat myself up. Oh, there was a typo in that blog post that I did. And, I'm like, oh, woe is me. So it's not that big a deal. And also, like I tell everyone else, we're not chiseling words into a stone. It's digital. I've got access to that client's website on the back end. If I realize, oh, typo, I can go in and fix it like that. So
Yeah.
it's not that big a deal. And it helps. I have to remember, okay, and also I have been writing for plus size apparel companies for so long that, my B plus work, no one can tell the difference between that and my A plus work. So, I mean, there are times where I thought I just phoned it in. I wasn't feeling well, whatever. And my client says, that's fantastic. I love this one. This is great. Because I lost my filter, whatever. And I'm just so blessed and lucky to have found a client like that who, you
Yeah.
know, who appreciates, who lets me just kind of like, let the filter down a little bit. And because, especially with plus size clothing, again, perfectionism. Oh, I have to hide figure flaws, which, yeah, great. Who sells clothes by telling people there's something wrong with you and this is going to hide it? It's more of a matter of not every shape clothing is made for every body shape, and what's going to give you room to move, what has enough room for your hips, or whatever parts
Mm.
that need to not be tight. There's nothing wrong with you. Maybe just that style is not right for your shape.
Mm.
And, that sort of thing. So I like to write about that a lot and stop beating yourself up. And, you're kind of worrying a little bit because a lot of the customers may still be caught up in diet culture and beating themselves up. And, oh, I'm not perfect. I got to wear shapewear and all that. It's like, okay,
Especially
but
especially now, Jen, I think with social media and all the magazines and the commercials, it's I'm so happy when they have bigger sizes, because everyone looks just extremely thin, and if they're not, they filter themselves. Apparently there are those filtering apps
mhm,
that people can make their, I don't know, legs longer, their faces that
look
younger, and so
younger and
on. And then when you see them in real life, it's like, oh, but that's not the real you that I have been seeing. The real you is the one that you should be proud of. And and then, so of course we come into this culture, the fake culture of none of us being
so we all think we're
who
wrong.
we are.
Yes, I discovered about a year ago. I'm horrible with my angles. My husband is so photogenic, I just want to smack him. But I don't have a good angle, or maybe I have like one. But so I do the camera up here and look up like that, and I was like, well, yeah, that's kind of flattering, but I don't look like me. I look like every other woman with my coloring and my age. But if I go like
I think
this,
many people can recognize that, and especially now, it's like, oh, no, this doesn't look good enough. Can you take another one? Can you take another one? And
well,
how do you feel that it's been affecting you? How has it been, if at all, limiting your potential, the things you wanted to do, and whether it still is? And who else have been affected around you? That's quite a big
yes,
question. Yeah.
yeah, it has definitely held me back. Um, am I a best-selling or even a published novelist? No, I'm not, because I can't work on it unless I've got, a certain amount of time. I have to have quiet, I have to have this book to write my crappy first draft. That's something I've really tried to work past, is that no, you can just scribble. I can write on my phone if I have to, if I have an idea. Just that's the other thing. People are afraid to start. They're terrified they're going to write crap. Even Stephen King says the first 8 drafts are awful. And he writes constantly every single day, and then which works for him, doesn't work for everybody. Um, so you
Mm.
have to embrace the suck. You have to understand that it's going to be awful. And one thing you can do is actually to take pressure off is to deliberately write something badly or try to write badly. And it may end up turning good, or it may just turn out to be garbage that you have to throw out, or garbage that you're clearing the deck so that you can start writing your best, which is still garbage. And we
You can still
watch.
make the choice of not publishing it. You don't have to publish it. Is that what
Yeah,
you're saying? You can still
exactly.
write it. Just
Trust
write it.
future me. There's editing. Most of writing is in the editor. It's trust future you. I have to trust that future me will know. And future, I do improve writing. I will look at a blog post that I wrote for a client 2 years ago and think, who wrote this crap? I would never write that. And I'd look, no, I wrote that. That was me. Of course it was me. And it's because I've improved and I've learned more. And we have this, I can't start writing until I
Yeah.
perfectly researched everything.
Yeah.
Until I learn, can master story structure perfectly, but it's really, we can and should, and I, write it and then rip it apart and put it back together. If it's not working, write the story to figure out what the hell it is, and then either, rip it apart and put it back together, or start over once you know what it is. That's a thing that people do. And it's it's a process. We look at writers in TV and movies, and I was just talking about Murder, She Wrote, where at the beginning of every episode she's there and typing on her typewriter and then putting a nice manuscript in the folder. That's the end of the process.
Yes.
But we all tell ourselves,
just going for it.
but we all tell ourselves that it goes like that. And of course it isn't interesting for a TV show or for a movie for a writer to be wailing and gnashing their teeth trying to get the right word, the right sentence, the right whatever. But that is the actual process. Like you mentioned before, writer's block, a lot of it is just you're stuck. You're either you've written yourself into a corner, or you don't know what's next. Or you just think, okay, I can't go any further until I've my character has gotten a new job now, and I can't move forward until I know everything I need to know about this profession.
Yeah.
And I mean, in some respects, you need to know a little bit so that you can structure the plot, but you don't need to know everything. It's, and when we talk about writing distraction free, I need to do a Google. I don't want to be, for the most efficient thing to do is just write TK, which is to come, which means I'll get back to this. But for some bits, it's like, no. When was the Central Park Zoo? When did it become wheelchair friendly? To wheelchair accessible? When was, because if the book, my book takes place in 1992, and yes, it was.
Yeah.
That's
So
they did have elevators.
on the other hand, how important is that in that story as well?
One of the major characters uses a wheelchair, so they couldn't go there. It would have to be someplace else. But you come to think about it, where they are, I could have changed a lot of these details are not as important as what happens. So I could have them be at a museum instead, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's this crazy attention to detail where it's like, how much do I need to know? But a little, you need to know some. And I think it's just that we read, as writers, we read so much. Even if you're just an entrepreneur and you're teaching yoga and you just want to write, content for your social media and your website, you only see other people's finished product. You don't see all of the crap, the scraps,
and the pain. You don't.
All the drafts and all the crap. And if you look, I actually have, my husband years ago scanned in copies of stuff I'd written in grad school and before, because I didn't have a computer. I had a Brother word processor, so all I had was the hard copies, and I have files that I can't read now. And looking at it, it's like, all right, it's not half bad, but look at all that garbage. that's the thing, is that we go back and we look at what we've done before and we think, oh, this is awful. Oh, this is absolutely awful. And now with the novel I'm working on now, I look at it as I'm going over things and thinking, that's actually a pretty good section. And it
Mm.
needs work. This is not ready for prime time. That's funny. That's a good bit. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to fix that there. But yeah, that's okay.
Mm.
And having that confidence makes it a lot easier to keep going. Where when you look at it going, who wrote this crap and I'm supposed to rewrite this? No. It's people just have doubts about themselves and then they give up. And we think, with imposter syndrome, I think it's that it is perfectionism because, well, one, I'm a perfectionism expert, so everything I can tie to perfectionism. But
And it has to be perfect.
yeah, well,
And
right.
everyone must like it.
If I'm not the greatest writer ever, then I'm garbage. It's this
Mm.
all or nothing thinking.
Yeah.
And Neil Gaiman has this wonderful story. And Neil Gaiman, he's very successful and talented. And he has a story where he was at some gathering of the great and good and brilliant. And during some musical entertainment, he's in the back talking to a gentleman who had the same first name as him. And the other guy says, I don't know what I'm doing here. I see all these people and they've done and made great things. All I did was go where I was told. And Neil goes, yes, but Mr. Armstrong, you were the first man on the moon. I think that counts for something. If Neil Armstrong has imposter syndrome, then we all do.
Yeah.
We all think that,
Yeah.
everyone has their act together. And it's when we're children, yes, our parents have to put this image forward of knowing what they're doing so that we actually trust them. And then as you get older, you realize, oh, they don't know everything.
No.
and we always talk about, those obnoxious teenagers who know everything. Yeah, they just realize that you don't know everything and you've been acting like it, so you need to stop. And it's we have to realize that, no, there are no grown-ups. We're all figuring it out. And we're all experts at things, and
no one actually gets there. I think I saw somewhere that they said adulthood is just an extension of your childhood. You don't just, something doesn't happen and you suddenly become somebody else. You bring a lot of the stuff with you as well, to an extension. But also, I think that with writing, especially, you mentioned earlier that, you look at some of the things you have written before and what is this? Who wrote this? This is awful. But it also, in a way, it shows that is progress, isn't it? That you have grown and that you wouldn't be where you are now if you actually had not written what you don't like now. But it was good, and it was a good step forward for where you wanted to go. So it's a part of self-growth
and learning. Exactly. You learn by doing. And the rule of thumb, you have to do something for 10,000 hours to become an expert at it. Well, you're not going to put out great stuff during those 10,000 hours. Mm-hmm. It's practice, it's getting better. And being able to realize that now me is a better writer than 2 years ago me helps me have confidence in next year me. In 6 months from now, I will get this written, and 6 months from now me will fix it. I have another novel in progress that I've set aside to work on this one. And because I know it needs to be ripped apart and put back together. And I kind of had it in my head, all right, I'm going to do this one and take what I learned from this to fix that. And because that's the other agonizing thing. If you are writing anything, you kind of need to let it sit and marinate for a little bit. With something for your business, it's better if you can leave it overnight. For a novel or, something big, they say set it aside for 6 months, work on something else, and then come back. And that is agony. It's like, I just finally got the end. Now you want me to not touch it? What? But it's exactly right. So I'm going to have to set this. That way you feel less emotionally invested in it, so that you can actually see it more dispassionately and actually be able to identify, yeah, that's pretty good. That needs work. This should go. Why did I even create this character?
Mhm.
And also ideas pop up. I had an idea the other day while just messaging with somebody in the group about the novel that's sitting there marinating. And I was like, oh, that's it. That's how I'll put it back together once I've ripped it apart. Okay. And
Mm.
okay, say I had to wait a while for that to happen.
Yeah. And I think also, sometimes with those fresh eyes, um, you can keep adding to, oh, yeah, I know this better now. There's a point where you are like, right, this is good enough. It's ready to go. Just off you go. Yeah.
And
Uh,
that's hard. That's hard to learn. That's the
yeah.
tricky thing because
Yeah.
we say once you can't stand the sight of your manuscript anymore, you're about halfway done editing it. So
Mm.
that's the thing. And that's one of the reasons that people are kind of like about self-published fiction, because people think an editor just gets your typos, and no, it has to do
Yeah.
with everything. And so it just takes so much to craft it just so, and it's difficult to realize, okay, am I just sick of this? Is it there yet? Or am I just obsessing? And
Yeah.
that's when we need to bring in other people who know what they're doing,
Mm.
writing feedback groups, developmental editors, editors, somebody, who can actually give you some feedback. These days in conventional publishing,
Mm.
editors don't edit, not as much. Agents will edit and help you get the book better. But even before that, it might be a better idea to hire a writing coach or hiring a developmental editor, somebody who's going to help you do what your publishing company used to do, so that
Cross
you
the
can actually
cross the
craft,
finish line.
yes, to craft such a great story. And we think the perfect book. Well, what's the perfect book? No one can agree on that. There are several books where I'm like, oh my God, I'm absolutely amazingly in love with this book, but I'm also amazingly in love with this other book, and they're very different.
Mm. Mm.
And other people aren't going to think that. There's one book by the Starless, called The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, and the first couple sentences are so good. It's just like, oh, why is anyone else writing? But of course, it's there's a pirate in the basement. The pirate is a metaphor, but also a real person. And it's like that just broadcasts what kind of book this is going to be. And it's just, uh, but there are other books that are nothing like that are also fantastic. That
Exactly. Yeah. And
we
not
live,
all books are going to be bestsellers,
right.
but they are still read. They are still useful.
Someone's going to
Um,
love it. Even if it's a
yeah.
social media post, a blog post, a line of
Yeah.
copy, for a product description, whatever, if it grabs somebody, they're not going to care about the details. They want
Mm.
something that is just going to make them engage them so much that they don't care.
Mm.
You
Doesn't
know,
have
it,
to be
it
a bestseller every time.
right. It's just, it'll be someone's favorite. There's one book that I
Yeah.
absolutely love that I'm pretty sure is self-published, and I really hope he writes the sequel soon.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that whatever you're working on, someone is going to really resonate with it.
Yeah.
Someone,
Yeah.
because
That's right. I mean, I was at a writer's course last year, and we all got our books finished. But I have to admit, I decided to stew more on the one that I have finished rather than publishing. But I then put out another one, a workbook, which is published. And it's not as big and heavy as the first one about perfectionism. This one is more about transformation and uses a lot of quotes as well and reflections weekly, a few times a week, and each week has a different theme. So it's so we start with, for example, vulnerability, and then we go into hope, and it has themes like authenticity, and action and self-care and so on. So it's got a structure for 10 weeks. You can also do it in 10 days, depends on, and you can start from the middle of it. You can start from authenticity or values if that's where you want to start. So it's quite flexible, and it's not a bestseller. It's not New York bestseller, but it helps my clients, and it also I have received messages that it has been really helpful, and they bought it also for their niece and so on, and that's good enough for me, even if it was helping just one person, then it has achieved its purpose.
Yes.
And that's, I guess, the things to look for. What is my purpose? And
yes, exactly. Sending ripples out into the world. I discovered that my purpose is to help people to stop beating themselves up. So that's why the perfectionism coaching, it really, draws me in, because yes, once you stop beating yourself up, oh my God, you're so much more energy.
What a relief.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It is
weight of your shoulders as well. Weight of your shoulders, and and it can actually, it can also make you quite emotional to actually love yourself.
Yes, because you're not used to it. It's scary and seems impossible, and then it's just, oh, okay. When you realize that we're all like, everyone is different, but everyone has certain things that are very the same. And that this worry about not feeling good enough, lack of confidence, even the most confident people, maybe a little,
the voice
down on themselves. Yes, exactly. They may have some doubts. And I don't necessarily trust a creative person that has no doubts. Like, really? You have no imposter syndrome at all? None? Ooh, I really have to read what they've written to see if they actually deserve to have no imposter syndrome or not. Because, how can you edit yourself if you don't think that you're utter garbage? If you think that you're actually putting out wonderful stuff in the first or second draft, then either you're a miracle or you're lying to yourself.
Yeah, and it's okay to just get it out there, and then lessons to learn
yes,
from
everything. And something doesn't have to be as crafted as a bestseller. If it's good and engaging and entertaining and has its impact, then it's all right if it's because it still did something.
Yeah. So would you say that you have paid some prices for being perfectionist in the past?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I still suffer from migraines. I've had migraines for over 35 years, and they've been pretty bad the past 10 years or so. And it's part of me, it gives me imposter syndrome, because it's like, well, I don't feel well every day. I'm not working hard every single day. And therefore I'm garbage, which is ridiculous.
That voice, I think you lend that voice to me as well sometimes.
Where it's like,
you're not working hard enough.
Yeah, all right, fine, I have migraines, but what I'm doing in the time that I can work is fine. There's always, I should be doing more. I should be, yes, but resting is an activity. Letting, right. And the thing is that the perfectionism and the pressure on myself is one of the reasons I get so many migraines. So, and it's just something that's ingrained. I think with the whole mind body health thing, the pain neural pathways are just so well worn in my head that I need to move them away. It isn't necessarily that I'm putting pressure and getting stressed out now, and that's triggering migraines, so much as that it did it so much in the past that my brain is still learning to not do that. And so it's just, I'd be so much healthier and get so much more done. And if I hadn't been beating myself up, and also just with writing, yeah, I already had a day job and worked full time, and it is very difficult to write on big work while you're working full time.
Yeah.
But also there is the, oh, okay, it's not, I need to have the right, the circumstances. I have to be able to do
State
my
of
my because
mind,
because
tidy house.
I've got limited time and energy, and therefore I have to really make it count. Yeah, the time's going to pass no matter what. So if you spend 5 minutes writing or not, that's the thing. I heard this wonderful advice last year. Just try to write 3 sentences a day. That's it. Just 3 sentences. And you can do that. And some days you'll write more. And that's the thing. They're always oh, just write 5 minutes. And then usually you'll get into it and write more. Yeah, but if I only have 15 minutes, I'm not going to go, okay, I just have 5 minutes and risk getting into it and wanting to write for an hour. But, you need to do it. And actually, it is better to give up writing anything when you're not done. When you're still like, ooh, okay, I'm enthusiastic about this. I'm going to, scribble down what happens next and walk away.
Yeah.
Because that way you get back in and you're like, oh, okay, oh yeah, let me do this. And you get drawn back into writing instead of like, all right, what happens next? And it's it's actually better. So it's
Yeah. So many amazing wise words, so much advice that I'm sure that perfectionist writers will find very, very helpful to give up perfectionism for writing, take on the writing. So are there any times where your perfectionism has been funny, that people would tease you with it, or has it ever been funny, or is it more of frustration for you?
I think it's more frustration, but also I do laugh at myself sometimes.
Uh-huh.
One of the greatest bits of advice I got when I in my early freelancing days was, don't reject yourself. Send a pitch. It was the guy who told me this talked about a writer who his second piece that he sold ever was to New York Magazine, because he had been a bouncer at a club and therefore had the inside information. And so they were like, yes, yes. My first piece, first personal essay that I sold went to the New York Times. And I was taking a class and the teacher said, this is exactly what Frank Flaherty at the New York Times likes for this column. Like this intensity. I'm like, okay, sorry. So I had that help. It wasn't like I've been sending stuff into the Times all the time, but it is a matter of getting the right fit. And Sue Shapiro, who has
Yeah.
several books about writing and getting published, is a wonderful teacher and good writer. I like her stuff. She's very focused on getting published and getting the right fit. So you get your foot in the door with an essay at Cosmo,
Yeah.
and things can go from that. So what was my so I just make fun of myself that people I tell people this, don't reject yourself, and then I reject myself all the time. It's like, oh, that's not good though. Oh, I don't know. Am I
So
really
working on the neural pathways to go for the opposite, good enough is good enough. Yeah.
and you're like, oh,
That practice makes progress.
yes.
And someone said, actually, one of my guests said the other day that she is now preferring progressionist instead of perfectionist.
Nice.
Very nice, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
As you know, I like professional imperfectionist, because I'm not a hot mess. I'm an inspiration. Just that shift of perspective. And I want other people, when you're imperfect and you're okay with it, you're giving other people permission to be imperfect and be okay with it. And that's probably better than being an example of excellence.
Exactly.
That's something. That's something I also like to harp on, is that perfectionism and excellence are not the same thing.
Completely different.
Perfect doesn't exist. Excellence exists. You have someone like Simone Biles, who will go do her performance, her routine, and then go over it and, okay, how could I have done better? but she's not afraid to get out there. She does it, so it's not that, she's a perfectionist. She's just pursuing excellence and realizing that she could have done a little better, but she's not beating herself up. And then when she had to pull out of the
And
Olympics.
that is it, isn't it? Not beating yourself up, even if you make mistake, being acceptance of that you are actually only human and it's okay.
Yes.
It's
And when she pulled out of the Olympics, it was wonderful because she had developed a little problem, the yips or the twirlies or whatever. And she didn't want to hold, what she stated was that she didn't want to hold the rest of the team back in the group competition. But really, it wasn't that her scores would be low. She could have killed herself. With gymnastics, they could, if you fall the wrong way, if you get really disoriented, you could break your neck. So yeah, it wasn't safe. She realized that, I'm not a failure for not doing this. I'm not, she's not being a coward. She's making a very safe choice. A reasonable choice.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. For everyone, mostly for herself and all the others as well. Well, Jen, I cannot thank you enough for joining me in this podcast. And I'm sure that our audience have really enjoyed. It's been really joyful to have you here as my guest, and so many amazing tips and advice for writers and also for all other perfectionists too. So, and I really enjoyed chatting with a fellow recovering perfectionist who also can recognize how it feels like, and when you notice what you're doing when you're procrastinating or when you're rechecking and just getting it out there is really what matters.
Yes.
For progress.
Yes,
thank you again.
Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
So if they want to, if any of the writers or if anyone would like to connect with you and find you, where should they go? How can they find you?
Oh, so many places. If you go to accomplished.app, that's accomplished with a T instead of an H, you can sign up for my free ebook. Then on Facebook, there's a group called Team Accomplished. We'd love to have you. Where we, I share a lot of content and do little trainings and videos about different aspects of perfectionism.
Well, thank you so much again. And we'll also pop those notes down
Pop the links in the show notes.
Yes, exactly. And thank you again, and have a wonderful rest of today.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us in I'm a Perfectionist, Get Me Out of Here podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please do leave stars and a review. Help me spread the word by sharing this with your friends and family. My practical manual, Transformation Through the Power of Quotes, will help you or someone you know get through tough times and feel happier. It is now available on Amazon paperback and Kindle. You can also check out our website, mindandmood.co.uk. Thank you again, and remember, imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. Bye for now.